When anyone takes their own life, it saddens and shocks those around. But when it's a Love Island contestant, questions are raised about responsibility. Mike Thalasitis was found dead in a North London park on Saturday morning. He starred on the dating show 2 years ago. It is important to stress no one knows why he took his own life, but his death has led to the Health Secretary today calling on reality TV shows to look after contestants who become famous overnight, even after programmes have finished. Simon Harris has our report.
Mike Thalasitis appeared to have it all. A professional footballer with the charm and looks to make him an instant star on ITV's Love Island.
If everybody was single, I'd still go for them too.
The exposure was a springboard to a glamorous new life in the spotlight. But this North London lad was struggling. This is the recreation ground at Edmonton in North London, where Mike Thalasitis was found hanged on Saturday morning. His death appears to be another tragic reminder that instant fame and celebrity can also come with a terrible burden. Among the tributes is a letter from a school friend, Charlotte Eaton, who wrote, "The media need to look after people like you with instant fame who are not sure how to deal with it." Fellow contestant Montana Brown admitted she was worried about him.
He did go through a really rough time, November, December time, and I know he was really struggling. And that's when I thought, oh my goodness, I feel like something bad's going to happen. You know, the work wasn't coming in. He'd finished Celebs Go Dating. The buzz had kind of gone. I know he had a massive tax bill that he paid. And I think the stress really got to him. And he kind of thought, you know, this fame isn't what it's cracked up to be. Where do I go now?
The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, said today the sudden exposure to massive fame can have significant impacts on people. And I think that it is a duty on any organisation that is putting people in the position of making them famous overnight that they should also look after them afterwards.
What I can tell you, as someone who works in reality television a lot, is that actually reality shows do their very best to both prepare, support during the filming and provide aftercare as well.
Mike Thalasitis wasn't relying exclusively on a showbiz career. He invested in this restaurant in Loughton. But opening a business can be stressful too, and there were other pressures. He recently lost a close friend and his grandmother. Tonight, ITV said Love Island contestants had access to psychological support before, during and after appearing on the show. And there was advice on how their lives might change and what support was available. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Armed police have kept parts of Addiscombe in Croydon in lockdown today after a man who claimed to have a gun threatened people. Simon Harris is at the scene for us this evening. Simon, what's happening there now?
Lucrezia, for almost 10 hours now, the police have been involved in a standoff with a man who they say was threatening to kill people. For most of that time, he's been sitting in a red Audi A3 in a side street off the main road behind me. When police first approached the car, he gave them the impression he had a gun, and that of course led to the full armed police response, with roads closed and police marksmen taking up position with guns trained on the car. Now, as far as we know, the man is still in the car, still refusing to give himself up, but the activity here has caused quite a bit of disruption for most of the day for people living around here, not only because the roads have been closed and buses diverted, but also some schools decided to shut and others were in lockdown for part of the day. The police tactic appears to be to sit it out. In the last hours, some floodlights have arrived and they've been set up in the street, so we expect it to be quite a long night. Whatever state the man is in at the moment, he's probably going to be very cold before very long. But the police seem to think that it's worth hanging on. They're talking to him, hoping that they can end it peacefully. As for what this is all about, well, they're giving very little away, although one source suggested it had no links to terrorism, was possibly connected to a domestic row.
All right, Simon, thank you for the update.
To Brexit now, and although we're supposed to leave Europe in 8 days' time, no one actually knows if it will actually go ahead next week, Friday. Well, the Prime Minister has been in Brussels today asking for a delay, but it all means yet more uncertainty. So for the many businesses in London that rely on workers from the EU, it is a worrying time. And as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports, few are more affected than the capital's hotels.
Like many of her colleagues, Lucia Kanotkova is in limbo. She's one of tens of thousands of London hotel workers whose lives have been affected by the Brexit paralysis in Parliament. Lucia came to London from Slovakia and has no idea what the future holds.
Am I going to be able to stay here and carry on working and living how I do, or do I need to just scratch the 10 years of my life and move somewhere else and start living from the scratch and start building my life from the scratch?
Camelia Alia also knows all too well what a dog's breakfast Brexit has turned into. She's originally from Greece.
Actually, we're just thinking to buy a house, and now we are afraid because we don't know what is going to happen. Maybe we're going to buy a house and after we don't have the same right, because we're paying the tax like everybody else, but still we don't know what is going to happen.
The Montague Hotel in Russell Square is part of a chain which has seen a hemorrhaging of staff since the referendum.
We've had about 60 of our key people return to Europe. And obviously we did exit interviews, we wanted to understand why they were going. The key reason, for the most part, was they didn't feel welcome. They didn't want to be a country that did not want them.
Years ago, we would have people coming in from the street, handing in CVs, looking for jobs. If we would post or advertise jobs, we would get several CVs. Now, since a year ago, we have vacancies and we hardly get for weeks any applicant.
There are just over 250,000 people working in London's hotels, bars and restaurants. Around 73,000 of them were born in other EU countries. That's more than a quarter of the total workforce.
London is open. London is open. London really is open.
Ever since Britain voted to leave the EU, London's mayor has been trying to convince the rest of the world that nothing has changed.
There is evidence that some of these people are leaving and not coming back, or the employers are finding it hard to recruit these people. But the important thing, we want these people to stay.
But for now, hotel workers are checking out as the Brexit exodus from London continues. Simon Harris, ITV News.
OK, back to Simon now, who's in our Westminster studio from where he's presenting the late debate tonight. As ever, Brexit is dominating the conversation amongst our politicians at the moment. Here's a look at what's ahead on tonight's show.
When it comes to making friends and influencing people, Theresa May hasn't had a good week. It's safe to say her speech last night, blaming MPs for the Brexit crisis, hasn't gone down well in Parliament. And it's not just opposition MPs who've been critical. The Surrey East Conservative MP Sam Gyimah described it as a low blow. Mr Gyimah is a former minister in Mrs May's government, but he resigned in November in protest at her Brexit deal, now campaigns for a second referendum. We'll be hearing from him. We'll also be asking politicians from other parties how they think the Brexit crisis will end. That's the late debate here on ITV at 11:15.